I am with Amanda, who is the genius behind Starfinder. It's true, isn't it?
Sure. Let's go with that.
Now, you have given us a huge prize bundle to give away for this game. I mean, it's massive. I don't know how I'm going to post it all. So we've actually taken to calling you Paizo now here at Com+1.
Oh, wow. I think that could stick. I like that. Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about the game, because this is quite a new game.
Yes. So the Starfinder RPG is the new role-playing game that Paizo has released, and it's a science fantasy role-playing game. So it's not exactly accurate to say that it's Pathfinder in space, for those of your viewers who are familiar with Pathfinder, but it's close. It takes place in the very far future of the Pathfinder campaign setting, and there are all new races, species, and all new classes and a whole new rules system. Is a brand new D20 system that simulates science fantasy space opera style adventures. It came out at Gen Con last year, and we are continuing to release hardcovers and adventure modules through the Starfinder Adventure Path to support the game.
Okay, now with the new Pathfinder, obviously Glorantha is very built into the world, but this is a game with multiple worlds. So how have you handled that in Starfinder?
So Starfinder, we really focus on the intergalactic nature, the universe-wide nature of the campaign setting. The core campaign setting is called the Pact Worlds, and so that was previously known as the Galarian system when Galarian in Pathfinder was still there. But the interesting thing that we like about the setting is that in Starfinder, Galarian has disappeared. And nobody really knows why, but in its place there's Absalom Station. So Absalom Station, of course, named after Absalom, the city at the center of the world in the Pathfinder campaign setting. Absalom Station is this very large space station with an abundance of diversity of different species and aliens and creatures that are all living together, under a rule of law. And it's sort of a hub for all the activity in the Pact World system. The Pact Worlds is named after the pact that all these planets have signed to loosely be allies and protect each other and defend each other from any outside threats. One of the reasons that nobody knows why Galarian disappeared is because we have something called the Gap. And the Gap is sort of our way of drawing a barrier in between the old campaign setting of Pathfinder and the new campaign setting of Starfinder. And the Gap is an indeterminate amount of history that passed in which memories were lost and history couldn't be recorded, and so people went about their day-to-day lives, but they didn't retain any long-term memories. And so during that long period of time, nobody exactly knows what happened. And so that's why nobody really knows exactly what happened with Galarian, and so that sort of explains a little bit about why some of the things from the old campaign setting are maybe not necessarily carried forward in the new campaign setting.
Okay, now the game itself, who have you aimed this at? Because obviously it's quite a competitive market in the sci-fi space, so who's your target for this, and what have you done to the game to appeal to that target?
Oh, sure. So I think our core audience, we certainly wanted to appeal to people who were interested and were established fans of Pathfinder who were interested in science fantasy, but we were really looking to bring in a new audience of role players who maybe came into the hobby more recently or who maybe just were not interested in traditional fantasy games. Maybe they played Shadowrun, maybe they played new editions of Dungeons & Dragons perhaps, but probably more like a Star Wars or Star Trek or some of those other types of systems. And so we really crafted a book that we wanted and we tried as hard as possible to be accessible to them. And so we organized it in a much more organic way than some other core rulebooks are. We made sure to include a lot of introductory text, a lot of explanatory text. There's an entire beginning of the first chapter that explains basics that we wouldn't expect people to understand if they hadn't played a role-playing game before or they hadn't played traditional fantasy RPGs before. It talks about what is a role-playing game and what are some key terms. These are things that aren't necessarily defined in legacy games, right, that come from an older tradition. So in addition to that, we also really put a lot of effort into creating a system that was very niche to this type of role-playing. So instead of trying to use the old Pathfinder rules and shoehorn it into a more science fantasy thing, we created a whole new system. We created a system for action economies and stamina and resolve that really does away with party balance issues. And so in a world with technology, we wanted there to not be such a focus on, well, we must have a cleric character to heal us. We figured that you can't just rest, when you're doing some of these space opera types of battles and say, there's a whole bunch of aliens in there and they're threatening us down the corridor, but we need to take a nap first so that we can get all of our hit points back, get all of our spells back. So we did that by using a system that uses stamina points and hit points, of course, and resolve points. And you get a small pool of resolve points. You can spend resolve points to get your stamina back and do special abilities that allow you to be a little bit more resilient in a fight and not have to run away all the time.
One of the things that I've been absolutely blown away by with this game setting so far is the art.
Yes.
The art is absolutely stunning. It's not just the art. I've been reading up on some of your characters here, and I've got to say, I love this one. Can I have it? Can this be me?
Absolutely, this can be you. You have wonderful taste because she's also my favorite, and it's totally not because I wrote her backstory. She's objectively the best iconic. All of our iconics are great. But our art is really beautiful in all of our Starfinder books. I've heard so many people say that they were interested in the game simply because the art is so gorgeous and so colorful and appealing. They may not have even been interested in games before, but the art really pulled them into the storytelling that we're doing here. And a lot of that is because of our creative art director. Her name is Sarah Robinson. She worked really hard to find artists that are from all around the world that are very experienced in science fiction and science fantasy art. And just had a really interesting portfolio. This artist here who did all the art of all of our iconics as well as the art of our cover of our Core Rulebook, his name is Remco Troost, and he has a long resume of video game credits and role-playing game credits, and it's just really one of the best artists ever, and just a really great guy. So it's just very exciting that we're able to appeal, to a very massive audience just based on the way that the book looks.
Now, we're giving away this huge bundle of stuff, and it's worth, I think, something like $300. That's a lot of money, and there's going to be one very, very lucky winner. But what if you don't win that bundle today, and you're interested in the game, but you haven't got $300? I mean, that's a huge amount of money. So do you need $300 to play this game?
You really don't, and we recognize that not everybody wants to buy or is able to buy every single product that's put out, and so for that reason, the Core Rulebook for Starfinder is really all that you need to play this game. It has all of the rules for tactical combat, all of the rules for starship combat, all of the classes, all of the races, all of the equipment that you can buy, and there's a setting chapter that tells you all of the major pieces of the setting that you need to put together a Starfinder campaign. There are no monsters in the Core Rulebook, but if you go online to Paizo.com, there is something called First Contact, and that was our free RPG Day publication for last year. It came out in June, and it's about $4 or $5 on the website, but it's a whole list of several monsters that you can use for your game, kind of entry-level creatures to get you, invested into the game. We do have an alien archive that we sell if you want more monsters, but if you really just want to get in on the ground level or kind of try out the game to see if you are really interested in it, all you really need is the Core Rulebook.
So your Core Rulebook is perhaps the equivalent of a player's guide and a GM's guide for certain other systems we won't name?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Everything that you need, and it's organized in that way as well. So the front of it is all an introduction on how to play the game as a player. Then there's the chapter on the races, then there's a chapter on the classes, and then there's the tactical rules chapter about how you play in combat in the Starship chapter, and then the GM material is toward the back of the book.
Okay, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today, Amanda. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hi there, my name is Amanda Hamon Kunz. I'm the managing developer for Starfinder at Paizo. I'm also the co-creator of the game. And I'm here to ask you to reach into your hearts and your wallets, if you can, to please support the children who are in the hospital. And also to tell you that if you're interested in science fantasy, you can check out the Starfinder RPG at Paizo.com or your local retailer. Thank you so much for your support.